There have been many polls and articles about young men experiencing more loneliness, the men's community leaning more conservative, and figuring out how to navigate a changing world. What do you think is the biggest change for young men in today's world? Story 1. Social media has negatively affected many young people. Economically, young people are facing a more challenging environment. A higher than historically normal percentage of young men will likely not marry, have children, or even date. Story 2. I just don't care about other people's personal lives as much as I used to in a world where people feel the need to share everything. Maybe that sounds selfish, but for the past few years, I have been working on myself rather than trying to please or impress others. I have also learned to be alone without feeling lonely. I do my best to stay off my phone in public, but most young people have a hard time doing that and avoid direct communication. No wonder people are so lonely. Story 3. I think the biggest difference is we were raised with the same masculine ideals, virtues, and expectations as past generations. However, the opportunities to fulfill or realize those expectations are increasingly rare or out of reach for most. Much of a man's life revolves around his ability to provide for others. When we cannot do that, we naturally isolate to avoid shame and embarrassment. That is the real cause of the loneliness epidemic, in my opinion. Story 4. Hyper-individualism. This world is becoming more and more hyper-individual and less social. There is no real connection anymore as everything happens online. There is no sense of community, connection, and responsibility. Everyone is just focused on themselves. No one is willing to have conversations or has the ability to listen. This creates extreme left-wing and extreme right-wing views and further polarization. People do not help each other out anymore. I think the cause of everything is social media, the coronavirus pandemic, and materialism. There is no human connection, mutual understanding, listening, or knowing what really matters. Story 5. Not a young man, but the father of two. The last couple of generations have degraded social interaction skills compared to more than 20 years ago. I remember reading about teenagers and young adults in Asia adopting the homebody lifestyle a decade ago, and that seems to have extended to the Western world as well. Seeing young people in groups in restaurants or theaters all staring at their phones is just sad. It is like they have no social catalyst without a device to prompt it. Story 6. As someone in that age range, everything just costs way too much for me to do anything. I don't heavily engage in social media, and I'm not addicted to pornography. I used to have a lot of meaningless sex, but that lost its appeal a while ago. Connecting with women without using dating applications, as someone who also doesn't enjoy bars or clubbing, has been a nightmare. I don't really try anymore because when I do enter relationships, the amount I've been expected to compromise one-sidedly in the past just doesn't make the effort worth it. If a woman is interested in me, she can approach me. I'm alright doing my own thing. I have lived in an apartment with roommates for about 4 years now. Buying a house isn't a very achievable goal given my income and motivation to work hard, because I have more interests than working away my youth for a company that will just lay me off after making a poor corporate decision that costs them too much profit. Prospects for any kind of secure future are bleak in my opinion because everything is so tumultuous right now. As someone born right before September 11th, 2001, and then growing up during 2008 and seeing the internet grow in real time, I hesitate to even begin to wonder what 2050 might look like. I'm just exhausted and I'm not even 30. I'm going day by day. Everyone in my age range that I know is just trying to wake up and do it again tomorrow. But that's definitely my anecdotal view. Story 7. I think critical thinking is lost. I think that everything now is a team effort. My team can do no wrong because it is my team. It is less about right versus wrong and more about reactions. Life is just entertainment for better or worse. Story 8. I have noticed an increase in online echo chambers. The positives of social media and the internet still outweigh the negatives, in my opinion. It is a wonderful tool for people to come together, learn new skills, share common interests, and make new friends. That being said, online social spaces are significantly different today than when I was younger. Communities dedicated to extremist political rhetoric, misogynistic views, and seduction tactics were once very insular and considered toxic dumps that most people avoided. Nowadays, many young men who are hurting or emotionally vulnerable go online seeking support and find these spaces looking for empathy and guidance. Instead, they are often exposed to toxic and damaging views that they then adopt. In the past, if a young man fell into this mindset, some of their rational friends could talk them out of it and provide a healthier perspective. Today, they can pull out their phone and vent to the toxic community, only to receive information that deepens their bitterness and reinforces unhealthy thoughts. The number of posts and comments I have seen on social media platforms from young men that reflect a spiteful and painful mindset is incredibly depressing. Story 9. I have noticed a trend of men supporting each other that I did not experience, and it is great to see. At the same time, there is an increasing number of young men not engaging in life. Social media, pornography, negative stereotypes, and expectations bring them down. Story 10. In my opinion, there is a significant breakdown in the social contract that has made men more conservative as they begin to value consistency and stability more than anything else. I graduated with a degree in computer science in 2014 and got a job about a month after graduation, paying enough to live in the city where I worked within walking distance of public transit. I cannot imagine that happening these days. Now, companies are saying they are going all in on artificial intelligence, leaving behind people who worked very hard for a chance. I believe there is lingering resentment because of this. Story 11. I think the biggest challenge is that there are not many places where a young man can be himself. I recently bought a gun for self-defense and fun. That caused huge waves in my social circles. My roommates got so scared they moved out. There's no way I would tell a stranger about it. They would probably just label me a redneck gun nut, even though I am obviously not. In my most recent workplace, I had to be very particular about how things were expressed. It was a tightrope walk, making sure a message got across but was not too aggressive or unprofessional. I will admit I am not the best with words. However, I was not anyone's bad boss or flirting with all the women in the office. I think my behavior would have been acceptable in other places. The standards have become very restrictive, and it makes it needlessly difficult to communicate certain things. I was eventually fired for crossing the line too many times. I live in a very liberal area. In many ways, I like it. Strangely, I noticed a subtle, sometimes not so subtle, prejudice against people like me, straight white men. I cannot go a month without overhearing a stranger making rude comments about me behind my back. Sometimes it happens right to my face. One time I went to dinner with my girlfriend, now ex, and one of her friends. Her friend went on a diatribe about how awful white men are. Side note, her husband is also a white male. I sat there politely listening, and my ex could clearly see that I was visibly uncomfortable. After a few witty insults indirectly aimed at me, the rant eventually came to a close. She then asked me pointedly if I am a feminist. In response, I asked, "What type of feminist?" The look on her face told me that I was a moron in her eyes. She thought my response indicated that I did not know anything about feminism. This fueled a round of sarcastic critiques directly targeting me as a person. I was not in the mood to get in a heated argument with her, so I sat there in silence. My discomfort transitioned to visible anger. She did not notice the anger, or more likely, she did not care. Eventually, even my ex got uncomfortable. She found a polite way to end the evening and found an exit for us. After experiences like this, it makes sense why more young men are lonely. The current culture is alienating to them, and it can make it challenging to establish a healthy social group. Not that I agree with them, but the conservative politicians validate the challenges that young men face, and it gives them political legitimacy. The left tends to marginalize young men unless they are in a minority group. It makes sense why young men lean more conservative. On the political spectrum, I feel like I am moderate. If I am forced to pick a side, I will have to accept a penalty of some form. For now, I am more comfortable being myself and keeping my political thoughts to myself. I have gotten used to being misunderstood by people on both sides of the political spectrum. It is not the worst thing in the world. Story 12. Getting hooked on social media used to be a fun experience, but now it is full of people putting you down or promoting false information. Kids believe it all. I have been lucky enough to grow up with it, for better or for worse. Story 13. The internet shaped all social groups in existence, for better or worse. Before the internet, we were all restricted to the people we knew in real life. That would be just a handful. Dating, in particular, was challenging. We were limited to friends of friends, work contacts, or hobby contacts. But social media, especially dating applications, shifted everyone's perspective. The competition became much more fierce. Story 14. I agree with many comments about the increased difficulty of providing in today's job market. What resonates more with me is the increased pressure to present a masculine front. That pressure existed when I was in my early 20s, but nothing compared to what some people online preach and have young, impressionable kids believe. My hope is that you will be easier on yourselves and not worry about all the ideals people push on you. Spend time with your friends, have fun, support each other, and enjoy your youth. You are fine and will be fine even if you aren't grinding, kickboxing, or dating multiple women. What is truly manly is being okay with who you are, working on what you are not okay with, and lifting those around you to do the same. Story 15. Positively, I started trying to really understand other people's perspectives on a situation. It has increased my level of compassion for people, and I feel like it has made me a better person. What changes the most for me is that I started looking at my life like it was a movie. If people watched the movie, would they think I was a bad person or a good person? Story 16. I got to the gym and I see most men like me pretty much live there because there is nothing else to do. Story 17. The amount of generalization, which you can see in these comments, has increased significantly and is having a negative psychological effect on young men and women. Story 18. COVID-19 seems to have severely affected many young people, especially men. Being isolated led them to explore some unhealthy media content. Story 19. Social media has damaged society. Many young people view social media, see the lives of the elite, and believe they deserve the same from their partners. They set unrealistic expectations, causing distress for both men and women. Story 20. The internet. No one has to figure anything out for themselves. Critical thinking is in decline. Just look at some of the foolish questions that get posted here. Story 21. It feels like societal expectations of men to be providers and stoic are still present despite progress on other gender and racial issues. I feel like no matter what I do or how I act, I am not considered a real man by some. Story 22. Do not socialize and prefer to be left alone and online. Their entire existence seems focused on artificially created things and shows no interest in the outside world or anything beyond their keyboards. Story 23. I was watching the Pete Buttigieg Iowa town hall, and a woman at the end asked how they could reach all those young men he was talking about. She said she knew a couple that age who had acknowledged their white privilege. So they were good, but she wasn't sure how to engage with the rest of them because their frontal cortex wasn't fully developed. Those people are allowed to speak, young men hear them say foolish things like that, and they only hear certain people pushing back and defending them. I like Pete, and his answer was very diplomatic, but he should have called her out on her attitude first and foremost. I think social media has made it so the smallest mistake or moment of immaturity can be used to attack a person for years. If you villainize someone for doing something without reprieve, you offer no incentive for them to stop. So if a young person makes a bad joke, instead of that being a teachable moment, it becomes a personality trait imposed from the outside until it is internalized. You can only weaponize guilt so far. Eventually, the person you're trying to control with guilt will push back strongly. That is what we are seeing with many young men. They are told they should feel guilty. They do not, and they will not. If you try to force them, they will resist just out of spite. Story 24. Social media has damaged everyone's social skills, but it's not often discussed that way. Instead, the conversation focuses on phrases like, Generation Z is lonely, which makes it sound like they are just emotional teenagers. As a result, many people say, I like being alone, instead of expressing, it's hard for me to socialize. This experience is common for everyone, but for men, it often leads to consuming content from extreme right-leaning political groups that make them feel like everyone else is to blame. It is unfortunate to see men who simply need friends become influenced by radical social ideologies. Story 25. The main issue is social media. Young people live through social media, and we struggle to differentiate real life from social media. Social media can be pretty ruthless with young men. It's like they hate us, but I don't see it in real life. I don't feel mistreated in real life, but I feel judged, mistreated, and even hated sometimes on social media. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I'm not the source of all evil either. Everyone is judgmental about your masculinity, your desires, your values, your opinions, and how you have fun. It's like anything you do to express yourself as a guy is deemed wrong. I just want to live my life and enjoy my youth. Nothing else. No wonder guys keep to themselves and look for peers to support them, which some people call the manosphere, often with a judgmental and negative perspective. But I'm trying my very best not to care and to focus on the positive, surround myself with friends, and block content that tries to demonize me. If you subtract this political and social war people are having towards us, life is actually good. We have more freedom, technology, and people can be themselves and relax. Story 26. I think most of us are rejecting feminism because it is no longer about equality, but about more privileges, benefits, and advantages for women at the expense of men. We already have equality. Feminism achieved that decades ago, and that is a good thing. But it is not 1970 anymore. Women not only have equal rights, but they actually have more rights than men. They have the right to abortion in most states. Men do not have the right not to be a father. Women can abandon a newborn at a fire station. Men have no choice but to pay child support for 18 years, even if they are not the biological father. Women are exempt from military drafts. Men are not. We have all been raised in feminism, and all our lives we have been told to trust women, help women, believe women, vote for women, pay women more, hire more women, support more women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, fund more women-related diseases, send more women to college, provide more scholarships for women, allocate more government funds for women, promote more women in management. Women, women, women. It never stops. Meanwhile, men retire 3 years later and live 5 years less, and the gap is increasing. Men contribute 60% or more of the healthcare system funds in their respective countries but receive less than 40% of the healthcare expenditure. Men subsidize women's retirement, healthcare, infrastructure, and government services. There are 2 women for every 1 man graduating college. Study after study in nearly every Western country spanning decades shows bias against boys in schools. There is judicial bias against men. Women receive 60% lighter or even no sentences at all for the same crimes. Divorce decisions are heavily biased against fathers, despite studies showing that children of single dads do better than those of single moms in education, health, crime rates, and salaries. And still, feminism keeps gaslighting everyone to care more about increasingly insignificant inconveniences for women instead of tackling literally life and death matters for men. Feminism is no longer about equality. It is a zero-sum game that takes away from boys and men to give to girls and women. I cannot support that. Story 27. I just cannot believe the rejection sensitivity of this generation. Did your parents never tell you no growing up? Is this your very first experience with disappointment? It is baffling to me that people are so terrified of it that they do not even try. Story 28. I say this anecdotally. I was in my 20s in the 1990s, and my son is currently in his 20s. My son is much better off than I was, but that's due to what my wife and I did for him. We gave him the resources and opportunities we never had. We gave him support and guidance that we never received. He has taken those opportunities and run with them much further than I ever could have. He has a good job, a good relationship with his significant other, supportive friends, and a healthy outlook on life. I look at some others of his generation, like my nephews and the kids he used to hang out with when he was younger, and it is different. They have goals but do not make plans to achieve them. They have friends, but those friends are not supportive in a real way. They are just echo chambers. They struggle to develop romantic relationships. This is not true of all or even most of them, but it is a sizable portion. The difference is the same one that has existed for generations. It is the parents. If we are messed up, you are to blame is as true today as it was when he was born. Having engaged, helpful parents makes kids better. It helps them deal with the challenges they face every day, and I think we are looking at a generational tidal wave. My parents' generation, the silent generation and the baby boomers, were less engaged and more misengaged with us than their parents were. This leads to more disengaged or misengaged parents in my generation, which leads to more troubled kids in the next generation. This has been amplified by the growth of online echo chambers that profit from telling people what they want to hear. If kids are struggling, it is not their fault. They do not know any better. If someone is 25 and still does not know any better, it is because they were never taught. Once they realize that, they look for a fix. One person tells them the fix is to dig deep and examine themselves, their life, their flaws and strengths, and then spend decades doing the difficult work of becoming a better person. Another tells them it is all the fault of women and that women hate them, which is why life is hard. Who do they listen to? Same situation, different decade, in the age of for-profit echo chambers. Story 29. As someone who is 38 years old and has always been lonely and single, I think it is strange that people are only now noticing it. I personally still feel like no one really cares, and this is just an issue that has been randomly brought up for political reasons. I am noticing more people reacting to young men and having opinions on them. However, they are not listening or showing any genuine concern. I cannot comment on whether it is common for these men to feel this way. I think most do not notice anything different. I also laugh at how the manosphere is getting more publicity because the parts being highlighted are extremely stupid and offer no solutions. In my day, the parts one associated with encouraged young men to go out and improve themselves. Now, the vibe is more defeatist. People's responses are not good either. I am an optimist. I think things are better for men. Opportunity is generally growing, but there is also more pressure on them to perform and be their best. That is a good thing. Story 30. Negative. They have to fight twice as hard as their fathers for women of half the quality of their mothers. Positive. For those who use it, it empowers them to be happy being alone. Being happy in your own company is a superpower. Yes. No offense intended. Quality is very subjective and lies in the eyes of the beholder. Story 31. Negative. People do not seem to socialize the way they used to. Parties, dancing, game nights, and similar activities are less common. Some people still engage in these activities, but it appears to be far less frequent. I know many younger individuals who, as a result of using only computers and smartphones to form their social connections, do not know how to interact with people in the real world and are essentially agoraphobic. Positive. Instant gratification. You can have almost anything or anyone ordered to your door on short notice if you can pay the price. Story 32. Lack of opportunities for economic upward mobility. The veneer of choice exists when things actually come from a few conglomerates that own everything. Popular culture tells you that your value only derives from material possessions. Story 33. I think this is a good question to direct not at young men but at the fathers of teenage boys. Story 34. Dating applications were actually quite effective 10 years ago. They have made dating very difficult for young men now. I feel very sorry for young men for many reasons. Hostility toward men is at an all-time high, and people are openly proud of it. Story 35. There are many more scams targeted at young men today than when I was their age. Cryptocurrency, sports betting, Wall Street bets, right-wing influencers, supplements, and more. Many products and schemes sell the idea of getting rich quickly and easily, getting strong quickly, and attracting women quickly, often by getting rich. It is all deceptive, and it is not surprising that young men often feel unfulfilled or end up broke and in debt. If you are broke, in debt, single, and living with your parents, it is not your fault. Story 36. I think there has been a trend towards emasculation and minimization of men's issues, which has turned into an identity crisis for young males. Now, I am not talking about toxic traits. Those can disappear. It just seems like in the 2010s there was a large push for women's issues with inequality, but men were left by the wayside. This has, in turn, caused some of them to be taken advantage of. For example, you saw a lot of women focusing on body positivity, which is fine, but how often did you hear about it for males? All I remember seeing was content about dad bods being attractive for a few months and then fading away. So what happens? The far right comes in and makes memes out of it. Impressionable male teens laugh, and then the seed is planted. Story 37. Young men in the past grew up idolizing action movie heroes, superheroes, and professional athletes. Young men today grow up idolizing Aiden Ross, Logan Paul, and Andrew Tate. Story 38. I was born in the 1960s. At that time, it was considered respectable to be a man. Since the late 1980s, being a man has been denigrated. Men in television and movies increasingly became portrayed as bumbling idiots. Women have taken on more masculine traits and feel less need for an external masculine presence. Men have adopted more feminine traits and do not see a path to be valued by women. For a man, value must be earned. It is not simply given. High-achieving men are suspected of being toxic. Nobody wants to be a real or perceived toxic individual. Thus, young men remain stalled, a perpetual child. Story 39. I am about to turn 30 this year. Honestly, I was shown very early in my life that the world often does not care about you. I always tried showing things I made that I was proud of to my family and never received anything but a shrug. I grew up with a father who was hyper-masculine and very toxic. I have stopped really telling people and sharing what I have going on these past few years because, honestly, it does not matter to anyone else but me most of the time. Whether that has made me very independent and able to take care of myself entirely alone, and that is a good thing or a bad thing, I am not really sure. All I know is that I tend to keep to myself because I have never really been shown that anyone else cares about what I am doing or what I have made. I am also used to seeing many people around me share what they are doing excessively and seek validation, which makes me uncomfortable, so I continue to go the opposite route. My online presence is very small now despite wanting to constantly create and do things that are creative. I just do not feel the desire to share myself and what I am doing with the world anymore. Also, critical thinking seems to be declining. I am not the smartest person, but I feel somewhat intelligent around some people because of how uninformed others have become. Things I consider common knowledge and manners are new to some, and I am flabbergasted that the world is this way. I am losing faith in humanity as a whole, and it is hard not to give up because of how thick-skinned some people are, especially considering how much power some of the least informed have. Story 40. Too much advanced technology all around. You used to have to confront your fears and talk to someone or die alone. Now, everything is made for hermits. People cannot talk anymore. Everything is text. Suddenly, people have anxiety when approached in public or when trying to approach someone. Worse, now you can have a virtual simulation partner. Need I say more? Kids do not play in the street much anymore. Instead, they are home alone playing multiplayer games, making temporary bonds with online friends, and thus not bonding with their local peers. This leads to a loss of the ability to approach people and form real connections. So many misinterpreted text messages lead to awkward conversations about the wrong things because the other person will not pick up the phone. Social media has literally been social suicide for many. Post the wrong thing or share the wrong thing, and suddenly you are stuck in a judgment circle you cannot escape. Lastly, artificial and silicone partners. People are willing to spend the rest of their lives with inanimate objects instead of confronting their fears and social taboos and simply saying hello to another human being who interests them, either in friendship or beyond. There is too much technology keeping you out of touch with people. People have lost the skills to socialize overall, and when they do, they are either having a mental breakdown because they cannot handle rejection or experiencing depression because they cannot handle loss. So young men are lonely, sad, isolated, anxious, agoraphobic, and essentially socially handicapped. Story 41. I'm 27 and I have definitely noticed the way men engage with women. Many men nowadays do not really talk to women, and I blame pornography and social media, such as subscription-based content platforms. Story 42. Ages 18 to 25 in general are very intelligent because of the internet, but can also be naive. People aged 18 to 25 are often hurt by words. I was a drill sergeant for 3 years, And one thing that upset them was telling them their parents did not raise them properly. For example, I would say, "Did your parents teach you to make your bed daily? No? Then they did not raise you properly, and neither did mine." Story 43. I never have to worry anymore if there will only be a baby changing table in the women's restroom. Having a gay child has become much less frightening. People more often fall into echo chambers and presume they are hearing the only truth and discussing important topics others will care about or understand. The increasing loss of broad understanding of basic facts about reality, history, and current events has been a serious loss. In the last 10 years, many people have felt empowered to be provocative and offensive. Previously, provocative individuals and offensive individuals were different groups. Men outside of echo chambers are freer to ignore traditional gender roles for themselves, friends, and partners. The backlash against feminism follows feminism becoming a basic consensus. Someone saying that women should be able to choose being a housewife is expressing a feminist concept in feminist language and generally does not realize it. Story 44. It is very concerning that Generation Z men are especially uninformed considering that we grew up in the information age. In November, I was shocked to see many of them believe that billionaires would be the ones to fix a country broken by billionaires. Story 45. Movies and film have gone into a strange spiral of female empowerment, enforced diversity, and demonizing heterosexual men over the past 10 years. Young men have few to no role models to look up to in movies and film. Story 46. The negative, the trend of demasculinization in men. The positive, people are starting to realize the effects and are becoming tired of the excessive political correctness. Story 47. As someone who just turned 30 and spent their 20s in the army, I can help shed some light. I think the biggest reason we are seeing a push toward conservatism in younger men is online echo chambers. Christian Picciolini, in his book Romantic Violence, Memoirs of an American Skinhead, highlights this idea about the rise of not only conservatism but also a general move toward right-wing ideas. The interesting question is, why isn't there an equal push toward leftism? Story 48. They have become emotionally softer. When my father was 25, he was living in a worn townhouse with my mother and 2 boys, a 3-year-old me, and a 1-year-old, one of my younger brothers. He had just earned his master's degree when he moved in. My mother was in medical school. Money was tight. They had no car, no savings, wore thrift shop clothes, and shopped for groceries at dollar stores. It was not uncommon for them to fall behind on bills for a month or 2, but they persevered, stayed married, supported each other, and did what they had to do to get by. Today, many men would struggle with this kind of life. They blame women, blame their appearance, are distracted by social media, have poor dietary habits, and say they will manifest a better life while spending their time consuming media intended for children. However, this might be a positive development. It is said that good times create soft people, so we must be living in good times. Story 49. I think many men have become more insecure because of what we see on social media, such as wealth, body image, and appearance. However, I believe it is the same for women. Story 50. Ever since COVID-19, many people have fallen into online echo chambers. This is not limited to young men, but it clearly affects them since they are the first generation to be raised online from birth. Story 51. The concept of masculinity has traditionally been associated with being stoic, but I think many more people understand that to be stoic, you must have full mastery over your emotions, that is, being emotionally intelligent. Story 52. People are consuming alcohol less frequently. More individuals are spending time indoors. Many are reluctant to act out due to video surveillance and changing social norms. More men are having less sex and are more socially reclusive than before. Story 53. Positive. College does not seem to be the only path for the future. Trades and other options appear to be more acceptable. Negative. Socially awkward. Unable to make eye contact. Story 54. I think we have seen what has happened to other men much older, and we do not want that. Many young men here lived in split homes where the parents could not stand to look at each other. They see young women our age who demand so much without offering much in return, and they understand what that has done to other men. They see how systems unfairly treat men and how there are many events and spaces pushed for women but not for men. We see all of this and are still told to be a man. But there is a lot of good. I think men today are more comfortable than ever opening up with other men about their struggles, concerns, wins, and optimism. Regardless of whether women are interested or not, many men have found solace in solitary love lives but are rich in their friend groups. Men, more than ever, are realizing their worth and are not settling like our parents did because they saw what 5 years of unhappiness has done to someone. Men are holding other men accountable more than ever, supporting their brothers, and always taking care of them at night. Story 55, stress for sure. Becoming an adult and being an aspiring and ambitious young man comes with stress related to university, work, relationships, and the future. But it is not inherently bad. The stakes are higher now than at other points in my life. Still, the knowledge and maturity that come with experience and freedom are rewarding. I feel more complete and self-aware as I age. Since I do not have children or major commitments besides myself, life feels exciting and freeing. Story 56. I think the male loneliness issue really highlights how dependent men are on women and partners. Ultimately, men should be perfectly capable of being friends with each other, forming strong social bonds with other men, and gaining a sense of satisfaction and companionship from that. However, as women become less dependent on men economically, they are more selective about dating, and men are apparently unequipped to deal with that. Women struggle to find companionship too, but based on my experience observing how men and women socialize, women are much more equipped to be friends and find satisfaction in that than men, especially heterosexual men, in contrast to how gay men socialize. Worse, groups like the manosphere do little to address any of this. It is painfully obvious that so much of the problem stems from how boys are raised and socialized, and the manosphere reacts negatively to the suggestion that boys and men should change their behavior in any way. Yes, women need to change how they interact with men too. But ultimately, any movement that aims to improve things for men needs to follow in feminism's footsteps by encouraging women to change their behavior while pushing men to address the barriers they face. As a result, men are left with even more reinforcement of the underlying problems. Story 57. The working industry has made many great changes. We are reaching a place where men can enjoy life and work. Negatively, this is how I see relationships and dating. It definitely seems that many men avoid getting into relationships due to the risk of being put in difficult situations, which could have major financial impacts if things go wrong down the road. Story 58. Things that have changed positively include a broader understanding and acceptance of men being able to express themselves in vulnerable ways. It used to be that men could only express frustration and anger and still be considered valid. Now a man can cry and most people will accept it. Changes for the worse include a significant decline in societal conditions. It has become a rat race to the bottom. People have to work twice as hard for half as much. Most men were raised with a provider mindset, but that is no longer a realistic expectation. Dating prospects are challenging. Pornography is ubiquitous. Those cheap dopamine hits are detrimental to everyone's brain. Story 59. It is my anecdotal experience, but I think it reflects the general findings well. Work-wise, after I graduated high school, I moved to a new state with my parents following my dad getting a new job. Due to the situation at home, I did not get my license at 16 and could not really drive until after I moved. So, I became somewhat of a hermit and not in education, employment, or training for a year until about 2007 when my dad fairly said, "Get a job or get out." I did and managed to get a retail job that paid slightly more than minimum wage within a week or two. I worked that job, getting promoted and earning more money over the next 8 years. I left that job, took a month off without looking for work, then found another job about a month later, working it for the next 6 months. The biggest surprise was trying to find work in 2022, which changed drastically. The majority of applications were online, and I was often ignored by employers, lucky if I even received a reply. It took me about a year and a half to find a job at an Amazon delivery service partner, which I quit a few weeks later after realizing they had lied about aspects of the job. It took another 9 months to find something remotely related to the field I was trying to enter, information technology, which pays poorly but is at least fairly consistent. The biggest change in job searching over the last couple of decades is not only how quickly you can get a job, but how you apply and interview for it. Regarding dating, there is ample documentation, media, podcasts, and other online information explaining how broken the dating scene is. After I moved, I did not feel worthy of having a partner, being too focused on helping my family stay afloat, and I refused to date coworkers who were my primary interaction with women over the years. So I stayed single. When I finally felt comfortable with myself, I realized how broken dating is and that I did not want to enter that rat race in the vain hope of finding a different form of happiness. I am just living life in a state of contentment since I have no debt and make enough to cover my needs. I am sure many men, both young and old, are in a similar situation. The biggest hurdle affecting most people's finances is debt and living beyond their means. I currently make $16 an hour, earning around $1,800 to $2,000 a month, with a little under $1,200 in total bills, and spending between $100 and $200 on groceries a month. I usually have money left over that I am starting to save for retirement in an individual retirement account. Story 60. I think they are not being encouraged or allowed to actually be men, unfortunately. Combine that with being constantly online, and you end up with isolated juvenile people, which is not a recipe for success. Story 61. As a young man in that age range, I think that this generation is going to be the most intelligent, hardworking, and productive group the world has ever seen. While technological advancements have hindered some aspects of our cognition, for example, acting as a crutch for the long division algorithm, it is this generation that will develop artificial intelligence, advance our understanding of genetic engineering, and correct long-standing political misdirections. The future has never seemed so bright. Story 62. COVID really threw things into chaos. I'm 22 and am part of the graduating class of 2021. After November 2019, I never set foot back into my high school until I grabbed my diploma. I worked for the majority of the pandemic and attended high school on the side. So, to most people not really thinking, they assume I've been out of high school for 4 years. But in reality, it's been 6 years for me. I never got prom or a big graduation or anything like that, just a bunch of Zoom calls. Many guys I know have this story of feeling older than they really are, while also dealing with older people telling them they're still kids, but every person younger than them calling them old. It feels very isolating at times. People don't invite you places because you aren't 35 years old, but if you befriend younger people, they can't drink and spend the whole time on TikTok. I had a lot of friends and myself abuse substances this way. Drinking yourself into a hole is easy when you don't have anyone to stop you or relate to, especially since joining the military. That has led to a few deaths in my friend circle and a lot of bad choices on my end that I regret but can't take back. The positive side is that I've gotten comfortable being by myself. I'm working towards finishing my degree, getting a home, and possibly, if I don't have any kids or spouse, I want an off-grid setup which I can afford. I'm taking the time to learn and read about the good and bad aspects of that lifestyle. If I had kids or a wife, that would obviously change, but it's not a guarantee and it's not a need, to be honest. I want a family, but if I'm being honest, I've had so much happen to me in the past couple of years that if it happens, then cool. If not, then whatever. In this day and age, it's likely more of a struggle being a couple. I'm willing to fight for someone I love and push through struggles, but I just haven't found that person yet, I guess. I used to think I would get married between 25 and 30, and now I don't really even know if I'm going to live to see 30. In summary, a lot has changed. Does anyone have a Tylenol? Story 63. I am not that young, so I cannot say for sure, and the men in that age group were not around before to say either. However, I will do my best based on my observations. One significant change is in social interaction. Social media and dating applications are widespread. There are real-world consequences for catcalling and making sexual jokes. More jobs are moving online. The COVID-19 pandemic caused years of social isolation. This essentially means young men have a more limited range of experience interacting with women in person, and they often seem to genuinely not know how to do it, even more than in the past. This has led to a lot of frustration and a growing inability to relate to each other's experiences. Story 64. Feminism and masculinity. Feminism has made men see women as equal and as equal counterparts in every way. Men see women as they see other men logically, and this is a significant challenge. Men are pulled in two directions. Masculinity says we need to be men, make the first move, provide for women, and be the head of the household, while feminism says women are independent, do not need a man, and do not need our money. Yet, many women still want a traditional man. The Me Too movement has scared men from making the first move or being assertive, which to women can be seen as weak because society and what women want are often different. Without a partner, men can spiral into emptiness because our existence is tied to finding a mate and reproducing. Social media and the gender conflict make everything worse. Men who cling to traditional masculinity may get women, but that means defying modern society, and most men will not do that because we want to respect and support women by not being traditionally masculine men. Story 65. Females are first in the workplace and socially, but they still desire career-driven men. I think it is very difficult to be a young man right now. Story 66. While pornography and addictions are afflicting many, the opportunity for a change of mind is shifting, but time is running out. Story 67. Several reasons, in my opinion. Young men are accessing pornography more often because of fear of rejection from women. The marriage rate is at an all-time low because conservative manosphere influencers like Andrew Tate are telling young men not to get married because women will take advantage of them. Young men lack motivation and purpose. Society tells men that if they do not have a wife and children, they have no purpose. Men are natural providers and protectors. Story 68. General life. The brainwashing device is called a smartphone. As a member of Generation Z, life nowadays involves people mimicking trends seen on social media, especially the recent one about frying school computers with pencil lead. Traditionally, it feels like having the mindset of an older person. I am also on the autism spectrum. It is very difficult to become friends with anyone. Being someone who never had interest in committing to the new trends and behaviors of teenagers leaves me in a very small, lonely bubble. The individuals who are lonely at the end of the day are often the mature ones. These are the ones who, in many cases, end up committing suicide. Dating life. Most teenage girls are only interested in someone with money. Some white girls are attracted to black guys. Many girls only want thugs. These days, getting into a stable relationship comparable to what older generations experienced has odds like winning the lottery. Economy. We are stuck in a world of inflation. Unless you come from a wealthy background, you will struggle financially your whole life. Jobs are very underpaid. Insurance. Insurance rates for teenagers until they turn about 26 years old are the highest rates in the world. With high inflation, it is difficult to pay $2,000 a year for car insurance. Teenage guys are notorious for wanting to become wannabe NASCAR drivers. So everyone gets punished for that. Education. Standards are low and most people skip class. Our education, especially hands-on learning, is very limited. For example, science experiments were dangerous in the past. Nowadays, the most extreme experiment is vinegar and baking soda. Schools do not dissect animals anymore. Music. It is not considered music unless it includes explicit language and a beat that sounds like a dish cabinet filled with porcelain falling down the stairs. Old music will always be better. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.